It started small, but quickly began to grow, getting bigger and bigger, until the impact was felt across the globe. And now there's nothing that can be done to stop it, here deep in the foliage at Withlington School near Radstock in Somerset. This is the creation of Simon Pugh-Jones, a teacher of science with a passion for orchids and a project that's become something of a monster. What started as a school gardening club has developed into a venture of worldwide significance, looking after one of the most important collection of plants in Britain and carrying out conservation work to save species and protect forests in South America and Asia. Pupils have taken part in expeditions to Brazil and Costa Rica and worked on research in conjunction with Kew Gardens and the Eden Project. And it's provided opportunities to develop skills in business, packaging and selling seedlings, and marketing pictures taken in tropical forests. It's even led to some learning circus skills. All this because the Rural Science Department packed up and nobody wanted the greenhouses.
These wonderful greenhouses that you see around us suddenly became empty because rural science wasn't in the school anymore. So I jumped in and said, right, I'll run that as a lunchtime and after-school club. And to be honest, it was mostly full of plants that wouldn't die, cactus and geraniums and that sort of thing. But we really set ourselves up as a little market garden, so bedding plants, tomatoes, all those sort of things.
Simon Pugh-Jones was a civil engineer building railway bridges until he toured a school for the first time as a governor.
I resigned the next day from the railways, did a PGCE, and then got my first job here at Ridlington as a physics teacher.
What made you so sure you wanted to become a teacher after you became a governor?
I just spent a day in the school and thought, no, this is me, really, I think.
Why?
Well, designing bridges was all right, but it's not very creative. Whereas what was quite apparent is being in schools is a very creative thing. You have to make it all up as you go along.
In 1990, he got his chance to start the gardening club, which changed direction after an orchid collection was donated to the school by a pupil's grandmother and revived a boyhood obsession.
I got 2 orchids because they sounded interesting. And after I'd grown them for a year and they flowered, I decided that's it. I want orchids, especially because I've been to the library. And when you go to the library and get books out on orchids, you suddenly get these books that aren't about plants. They're about all these exciting tropical forests and adventurers looking for rare plants and getting eaten by crocodiles and all that sort of stuff, which to a teenager suddenly made sense, really, about, no, this is something that counts.
The school's orchid collection now includes species from 4 continents and hybrids not found anywhere else on the planet. Honours and awards are regularly won in national and international competitions, but pupils have gained as much recognition for conservation. This is one of only 2 orchid propagation labs in Britain.
You're surrounded by probably several million rare tropical orchids.
Several million?
Several million.
In these jars?
Okay, yeah. I mean, if you take some of them, here we are. Well, this is the stage we sell them at, so you're talking about 8 or 10 in that jar. But if you look at a jar that's germinating, this one was sown about 2 weeks ago and is just beginning to germinate in here now. We sold a whole seed pod of these. That's likely to be over 1 million seeds.
But what I'm doing here is moving the orchid seedlings, as you can see here, onto the next stage of growth. And so all we have in here is extra chemicals and nutrients which they need to continue growing.
Is this fun?
It depends what you're working with. If you're working with something that's really boring, yeah, it isn't much fun. But if it's something that's quite interesting, something you haven't worked with before, it can be quite nice.
Like what?
Well, if it's a rare orchid, so you've got this rare orchid in a jar, which if you make one mistake, you can sort of destroy it and then no one else will be able to have it, so it can be a bit scary, but I'm doing all right so far.
The school is a pioneer of conservation enterprise and runs a business called STEM Labs. The seeds of endangered species are sent here from remote areas of South America and India. Ridlington School grows them into seedlings and then sends them back or sells them and passes on the profits. The plants not returned or sold end up here, in one of 4 greenhouses.
We start off in the warm end, so you are surrounded now by lowland tropical rainforest. So we're talking about Brazil and we're talking about Southeast Asia. If we find a few examples, well, here we are. This is Sophronitis coccinea. Now, you see, this is a plant we've seen in the wild in Brazil on one of our trips there, and we've been able to photograph this being pollinated by hummingbirds. And nobody had actually done that before. Everyone guessed it was hummingbird pollinated because of the structure of the plant and whatever. But until you actually go there and can be there with a camera at the right time and see it going in, you can get all those fantastic science things coming out of what is real plants. So we're rather fans of the species.
The Brazil expedition took place in 2000, with support from the Millennium Youth Fund and the Royal Horticultural Society. And the pollinator research won third place in the European Young Scientists of the Year contest.
If you come through this door, you should feel instantly that the temperatures drop down, because we're now looking at mountain plants. So we've got the cymbidiums across this end, which come from high-altitude Himalayas. These are the odonts, so these are high-altitude Andes, and the ones over the far end are high-altitude Central America, so a minimum of about 10 degrees is what we've got in here. Most of my students here have done their own crosses, and that's part of our ABC science, that every student makes their own hybrid as part of their genetics project. So we have a fair mix of hybrids here. So for instance, some of the two hybrid cymbidiums there, no one will have crossed those before. If you're the student that makes that cross, you've got a new plant, you can name it.
A second research trip was organised in 2004 to Costa Rica, with pupils raising much of the money themselves. They returned with more work on habitats and pollinators that was once again eagerly read by experts at Kew Gardens.
Within our cool section, we've got our hothouse, which is a really glorified propagator, but is the perfect spot for any plants that are warm growing but lower light levels. So a lot of these are African species. That's a really great example. This is Arangis lutealba var rhodisticta, which is fairly widely distributed across particularly East Africa. The other thing we've got down here is more of our Paphiopedilums, because these are forest floor orchids, so again they want the lower light levels and constant warmth. And these are all the species on this are CITES Appendix 1, so these are really threatened orchids.
Simon has been on his own expedition to Sikkim in northeast India to create links with a school and conservation project in the foothills of the Himalayas.
Down this way, we've got what we call the really cool end. This one is the very high altitude plants, and we're looking at plants that in the wild you may find sometimes with snow on them. In the British climate, they'd find that a bit extreme, so we keep a minimum of about 6 or 7 degrees in here. The stars of this end are things like Coleogene cristata, which is one of the classic plants of Sikkim that we've seen on our expeditions there, growing on trees and in rocks. And we found these at about 2,500 metres.
There are between 30 and 40 members of the Orchid Club, each given responsibility to look after a particular species.
What do you actually learn from looking after orchids?
Well, you get a good sense of the life of different plants. You start off with a bunch of plants at, say, the August or whatever, and then you grow close to them.
These are zygopethalums. They come from Brazil, and these are a couple of years old, these each plant. I just think it's because they're so rare that I like them so much.
What are you doing there?
Pollinating it.
Is it difficult?
Yeah.
Why?
If you're too rough, the flower falls apart, and if you're too gentle, it just doesn't work.
Do you look after the same plant?
Yeah.
Do you argue a lot? It's all teamwork.
To be honest, sometimes, but it's not a lot.
What do you argue about?
Whether to repot things, basically.
Yeah.
Away from the greenhouses, club members join the production line for STEM labs. Orchid growing kits are sold at the Eden Project, Picton Park Horticultural Gardens and Wild Walk at Bristol.
We're filling up these bags on coconut bark and normal bark.
They have to be between 20 and 25 grams because it's enough to fill up the pot with compost for the plants growing.
The STEM Labs business reflects the school's enterprise status and its belief in offering vocational opportunities to all abilities and pushing beyond the curriculum. Another business that sprang from orchids is called Los Amigos del Bosque, which produces cards using photographs taken in Costa Rica.
I'm the company secretary.
I'm the finance director.
I'm actually the managing director of the company.
We've got our story on the back and a little picture of the school in Costa Rica, and that's our main project. We're going to raise money for a school in Costa Rica to help them fund for a new secondary school.
We're going to sell off £200 to them in the near future. We're just getting that out.
Without sending profit from our company to invest in the local schools. These rainforests will die out. They'll either be chopped down for wood or for development, and that needs to be stopped.
Sixth former Chris is not only the managing director, he's also the photographer.
It just gave you a totally different outlook on life. You go there, it's beautiful, it's just amazing. It's really calm, placid, and you just got wildlife around you. We have hummingbirds next to our bedrooms, had flowers all around. You just woke up feeling really great.
A third rainforest expedition will take more pupils to Brazil. Meetings like this prepare them for the trip by drawing on past experience.
Was it hard walking about all day in those conditions?
It's not too bad. It's not really hot. Well, it wasn't hot for us anyway, so...
The main focus is going to be looking at pollination success amongst the orchid populations of the Mater Atlantica. And the idea has really come from Dr. Dave Roberts up at Kew Herbarium, who regularly rings us up and says, I've got this great idea for a project, but I've got no funding or people to do it. Do you want to have a go at this? And he's recently done research looking at how successful populations are at producing seed, because obviously you might look at a bit of forest and say, right, well, there's orchids here, this is fine. But then if you look closely, you'll find that none of them are producing seed. And that could be because the patch of forest is so small that it no longer supports the pollinator.
As well as helping out with research for Kew Gardens, pupils have been asked to advise on exhibits at the Eden Project and in this rainforest recreated for Wild Walk at Bristol.
It took a fair amount of time coming round here and spotting the right sites for the right plants. And seeing all these flowers here on this one now is real confirmation that we've got this one right.
I feel it has expanded at Bristol. We were beginning to stagnate with some of our plants, and now we've got any gaps we had, we filled with orchids.
All because of Simon and Ripplington?
Basically because of Simon and Ripplington School, yeah. The results speak for themselves. It's absolutely beautiful in here now.
There are other, less botanic skills that pupils have picked up in the science department.
My wife's family are all musicians, and after a while I got fed up about being the one with no talent that sat about in parties listening to other people. So I decided, right, I'm going to do something where I can perform and do something a bit special.
So Simon learned a few circus skills. At the height of his expertise, he was even asked to support those local icons of popular culture, the Wurzels.
And of course it has one fantastic use with our expeditions, in that if you don't speak the language, being able to juggle and teach the locals to juggle is a great way of communicating.
Be honest, what gave you more satisfaction, appearing on stage with the Wurzels or growing an orchid?
Oh, orchids without any question. Although the Wurzels are fantastic local heroes down here in Somerset.
You put them second to orchids?
They are second to orchids.
That's saying something, isn't it?
And I think it's because we have discovered that we can have a serious global impact with what we're doing in the school. And that's quite a big deal for me, and it's a big deal for the kids growing up here, many of whom have never been much further than Bristol.